Welcome back to Living Fit's 2 Minute Tuesdays. Hope everyone's had a great start to the week. Let's see if we can get straight into this week's question, which comes from Nadine, who asked, what's the best workout for busy gyms? All right, so I thought this was quite an interesting question. So let's put 2 minutes on the clock and see what we can do. All right, so usually most people, if you're in a commercial gym, the busiest time is peak time, obviously. So quite often it's hard to get on specific pieces of equipment. So what sort of training modality would I choose for a busy gym? Now, I'm a big fan of what they call complexes. Now, complexes are usually a series of exercises that are paired in a sort of like a mini circuit using one piece of equipment. Now, this can range from barbells to dumbbells to kettlebells. I'm a big fan of this in terms of barbells because usually if you can get into a squat rack, you can really dominate this and it can really work. It can work really well for you. So a good example of a complex would be starting off with a front squat into a standing overhead press, into a back squat, into a good morning, and then into something like a bent over row and finishing with something like push-ups. You haven't moved and you haven't put the bar down, which is really good for some muscle endurance training. The other thing is you're also limited by your weakest lift. So generally in this complex, it'll probably be an overhead press for someone. So, because usually most people can't overhead press more than they can front squat and definitely not back squat. And well, maybe RDL could be a limiting factor if you lower back, but that's the thing. So you can mix up your reps for every exercise based on what your limiting factor is. So in this example, you might be able only to do 10 overhead presses with the bar itself, but you can do 20 front squats. And because you get that accumulated fatigue, by the time you get to the back squats, you might only be doing 15 back squats, and then you might only be able to push out about 10 Romanian deadlifts or bent over rows or whatever your good mornings maybe you've got, because the bar's already on your back from the back squats, you go into a good morning and you're already fatigued, those lumbar rectors, hamstrings, so the reps come down. But it's very, very good for a short, intense, well, not intense, because remember, intensity is based on 1 rep maximum, so we'll call it density more than anything. But it's a very good get into the gym, get out of the gym very quickly sort of workout, because you can pair 5, 6 compound exercises back to back without ever putting the bar on the ground, without ever having to change the equipment, without ever having to change the weight, so to speak. So I'm a big fan of complexes, especially from a cumulative fatigue standpoint, as well as building maybe even some lactic acid density. So mitochondrial density as well, because generally all the exercises are based around the same kind of movement patterns. So like I said, in that example, we've got a front squat, we've got a back squat, we got a lot of posterior chain and hip extension there. So it's a good balance of fixing your weak point in that complex, which once again, for most people in this example would be an overhead press, and solidifying those strong points with maybe a type of training response that you're not used to. Like, when was the last time you did 20 front squats? So once again, this is a good way of ironing out weaknesses, as well as maybe hitting a rep range that you wouldn't normally hit in a specific exercise, as well as having that accumulative fatigue from having so many complex movements back to back without putting the bar down, so to speak. So these are humbling, shall we say, supersets or giant set. It's not really a giant set, because a giant set usually focusing on the same muscle group, and that's primarily what but yeah, we'll call it a complex. I believe they've been called complexes in many forms of literature. But yeah, that would be the modality or the type of training that I would look at in terms of if you wanted to do some sort of weight training program in a busy gym with limited gear. Of course, you can do the same sort of thing with dumbbells instead, or even a kettlebell. Maybe not so much a kettlebell with this example, but pairing 5 compound exercises back to back where you're not putting the implement that you're using as your load down, it stays in your hands, is a very good training protocol to take for busy gyms. All right, I hope you got a lot out of this. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you think someone might benefit from this, please share it with them. If you have a question yourself, put it in the comments below. And we'll see you next week for 2 Minute Tuesdays. Thank you.